Do you want to improve your drawing skills in the style of realism? Do you want to be able to draw realistically and get away from having to use the grid method? With this video, I'll show you how to look at a photo or still life or subject differently, and how to measure in your head the lines and forms and shapes and values that make up a realistic drawing. Later in the video, I'll go through the steps I took to draw this simple portrait using the techniques I'll talk about now. Now, what I'm going to show you first is a series of comparisons, and this is really just to illustrate how differently you can start to think about realism drawing and how simplistic you can start to think about the techniques of drawing realistically. All right, first comparison is, what is the difference between these two lines? And it is the obvious answer, so I'll tell you that. What you want to do is, part of this technique is moving your eyes back and forth, and being able to tell. So the one on the right is slightly longer than the line on the left, or you could say the line on the left is slightly shorter. Second comparison is, what is the difference between these two lines? Line on the right is at a slightly different angle than a perfect vertical line. Line on the left is closer to a perfect 90-degree angle. What is the difference between these two lines? The line on the left is a little bit bolder, a little bit thicker than the line on the right. All right, what is the difference between these two lines? The line on the right has a slight curvature to it, whereas the line on the left is at least closer to a vertical 90-degree angle. All right, what is the difference between these two circles? Circle on the right is of a slightly darker value, slightly darker shade than the one on the left. What is the difference between these two grayscales? Got a couple of grayscales that go very dark at the top and then go very light towards the bottom. The one on the right is rendered in such a way that is kind of blocky, where each progression of shade, depending on where you're going, if you're going from light to dark, dark to light, is done in kind of a block type format, whereas the grayscale on the left, at least there's more of an attempt to seamlessly blend from dark to light or light to dark. All right, what is the difference between these two circles? Circle on the right is slightly larger. So what did this demonstration have to do with improving your realism drawing techniques? If you can see the subtle differences by moving your eyes back and forth with these comparisons, then you can apply the exact same ability to your drawing. Now, this is something that takes some practice, takes some time, but once you've learned to look at a picture differently, your drawing skills can't help but improve. Another technique I'll use is imagining a plus sign over top of your photo and over top of your drawing. So this is a plus sign with a perfect vertical 90 degrees angle and a perfect horizontal 0 degrees angle. And what this does is a little bit difficult to explain. It gives you a second reference point. You obviously have the reference point of the photo or still life that you're drawing, but the having a perfect vertical and horizontal reference point can oftentimes improve your accuracy as far as your angles in your drawing. Like the beginning of that shadow on my nose, it is just slightly off of a perfect vertical angle. So it's something where using the reference of the photo, and this is similar to one of those comparisons I showed you in the beginning of the video, where you're moving your eyes back and forth and noticing subtle differences and then incorporating those differences into your drawing. So in this case, you realize that it is very close to the vertical, perfect vertical 90-degree angle, but it's not the 90-degree angle. So it's just slightly off, and it's those little tiny details like that can really add some good accuracy into your drawing. So with this plus sign, you're just imagining the plus sign. I've literally put it here, but imagining it over top of your photo and imagining it as you're drawing over top of your drawing to be able to compare and contrast, and it really just gives you that second reference point, a second reference point that has a perfect vertical, perfect horizontal. All right, another technique I'll use, and I learned this in college, is I'm going to purposely blur the left photograph of myself. And what you want to do when you're drawing is occasionally blur your vision by squinting. And what this does is enables your brain to be able to see your subject matter in more basic shapes, more basic forms. It also allows your brain to be able to get away from realizing that you're drawing, in this case, a face, or if you're drawing a car, and just lets you be able to see what you're drawing in a different way. Lets you be able to see it in basic shapes and basic values, where you can see, okay, there's an obvious dark into light in this section, and this is, lighter or darker than another section. And I think it allows you to be able to see measurements easier, or at least in a different way, and then be able to compare that with normal vision. So you're just blurring your vision by squinting, getting your eyelashes in front of your eyes. The other thing is, especially for beginners, shot selection. Selecting a photo that is not going to frustrate you as far as getting it accurate compared to another photo that might. So with this, I've got a shot of myself where I've got one pointed lighting, and what that does is it really gives some nice harsh shadows. They're like totally obvious shadows, and decisions that I'll make that are completely obvious. You've got a dark section here, a light section over here. The other thing is I could have chosen like this shot of myself, but it's a little bit more difficult, again leaning more towards talking to the beginner here, because I'm showing teeth. Not something you really think about, but I've covered up my eyes with the shot that I ended up using, and I'm not smiling, not showing teeth, because it's just one more element for you to have to get correct. And especially with the eyes, I could have gone with a different shot like this, where you don't have to worry about the symmetry issues, because I'm looking off to my right. But wearing sunglasses covers up the eyes. You don't have to worry about the eyes. The eyes are one of those things that are, at least for the beginner, one of the more difficult areas to draw of the human face. And it's because we're all so used to looking at each other's eyes. We can't be fooled. If there's a mistake, we're going to notice it. So by all means, if you're intermediate or advanced, choose a photo that is going to challenge yourself. But to try to cut down on that frustration factor so you actually finish your drawing, it is a good idea to have a shot selection, a photo that it's got some depth. It's not flat. There's obvious decisions with the values. You're covering up certain difficult areas where you might get frustrated, as far as if you're a beginner. So let's get started here. The other technique or idea that you might want to do is I've printed out the photo in the exact scale that I'm going to draw or do the drawing. So I printed this out, whatever this is, 3 inches, I don't know what. But I'm going to do this drawing in the exact same scale. So again, if you're intermediate, or advanced artist, by all means, print out a 2-inch photo and make a 2-foot drawing or painting to challenge yourself. But again, to cut down on the frustration factor for the beginner, this will help. The other thing is I've got the printout of the photo like as close as humanly possible to the start of the drawing. So it's very close. I'm able to move my eyes back and forth and make comparisons easier because the photo is so close, and because I know that I'm trying to achieve the exact same scale as what the photo is. So again, using the plus sign, I can see here that the decision of the flat chin is very close to the 0-degree horizontal line, whereas that next line is more of like a 45-degree angle of the continuation of the chin there. Another thing is to not be afraid to use that eraser. I think a lot of beginners will think, well, you can't use the eraser because that's cheating. I can't use that eraser because then it's not a true drawing or something. Every professional out there, as far as an artist, uses their eraser. I guarantee it. Now, you can obviously challenge yourself by not using the eraser. But again, for the beginner, you just saw me use the eraser. I use the eraser all the time. It just, if you're moving your eyes back and forth and comparing whether or not you're getting this right, you really need to use that eraser. Pointing out a little area of skin there that I mapped out underneath my lip that I'll deal with later as far as the value. And I'm really beginning to, I've got the initial decisions of like the length or measurement of that chin area, and I'm going to use that as like a reference or a second reference in which to decide other measurements further into the drawing. So I know that like the lip, which I've already got done before drawing the mustache, I know that is not really similar. It's probably half of the length of what the mustache area is, and it definitely doesn't compare to the chin measurement from the lip to the bottom of the chin. But I'll oftentimes do this where I'll use measurements that I've already established, I've already decided, this is the length of the chin. I'm going to have to move on from this point, and then go back and be able to say, how does this relate to what I've already got? Like a perfect example is that the measurement of the nose, and how it relates to what I decided as far as the measurement of the chin. You can see it's very similar. So in this way, you can say, okay, in the photo, it looks very similar as far as the measurement, the nose and the chin. How does my drawing look? Is my drawing reflecting this similar measurement as far as the nose and the chin as it is presented in the photograph? And just trying to draw out the sunglasses there, and I've got a little area where there's a shadow underneath the sunglasses, and I'm just going to map that out and basically deal with the value of it later. Sometimes I'll do this where I'll put it in there, map it out, and get the measurement for it, and then deal with coloring it in or shading it later. Dealing with the measurement from like the base of the nose to where my face meets the sunglasses, or it meets the beginning of the sunglasses there if you're looking vertically upward. So, and try to get out the eraser if something doesn't look right, make the correction now. It's a lot easier now than an hour from now, when you've got pretty much everything fleshed out and you've made decisions as far as the measurements, and you're like, well, I really should have taken the time to stop and see whether or not this drawing is accurate. Going through trying to get the values right in the sunglasses, noticing that the sunglasses are kind of dipping down there to the left, and oftentimes good, to stop and reevaluate where you're at. And if you need to make some changes, so with this, I don't really need an eraser. I can just extend that sunglasses to try to get more of a symmetrical look to it. And going in and continuing to block in some value. And it really operates the same way, where you're darting your eyes back and forth, trying to determine whether or not you're getting this accurate as far as the values. And another thing is there is such a thing as artistic interpretation, where, are you really trying to get this thing 100% exact? Again, trying to cut down on the frustration factor. You can use that, a little bit of artistic license. Here, blurring the eyes again to be able to see your photo in a different way with more basic shapes. Noticing that harsh line of the shadow on the forehead. Realizing I need to take in my hairline a little bit. And then again, with those decisions of having the one-pointed lighting, it can really make for a much more interesting drawing because there's more volume and it's not as flat because of the shadows. Here, noticing, there's a little highlight. It's just barely lighter as far as, that little area in my forehead, whereas this little area here is a little bit darker. And, choosing to emphasize that or de-emphasize that. Again, getting back to artistic license and your interpretation and sort of making the drawing your own. You're using the photo as a reference, and you're really trying to, in a way, express yourself with making it different. Maybe it's the line quality. So fleshing out the neck and the shirt here with the folds. So doing the same thing really here, and trying to pay attention to the rest of the photograph, not just having all the detail in the face, but being a good steward of trying to have a complete drawing as much as possible. So in review, you've got these techniques that try to talk about where you're basing some measurements on what measurements you've already established in the beginning of the drawing, which can really help as like yet another reference point. You've already got the reference point of the photo, and going back and saying, how do these lines compared to what I've already established. Then the idea of blurring your vision by squinting, getting your eyelashes in front of your eyes, being able to see your subject in a different way, where your brain isn't recognizing it as a face, it's recognizing as more like basic shapes. And you've got these comparisons where if you're able to see the differences here, then you really are able to draw realistically. It's just the time that you want to put into it. And then this slightly difficult technique to explain anyway, of using this plus sign, the perfect vertical, perfect horizontal. And it's really just being able to have a second reference point to be able to compare and contrast, how are my angles looking in comparison to a perfect vertical or perfect horizontal. So hopefully these techniques will help you out in your pursuit for improving your realism drawing techniques. So this is the first of what I hope to be many videos on instruction as far as drawing is concerned. Thanks for watching.